Okay, so good afternoon. Today's session is on modernizing data and data access. Before we start, I just want to cover a couple quick topics that we're going to cover today, and then we've got a series of panelists that go through into each of those topics. The first that I'd like to impart to you is looking at our existing legacy systems. Now, there's a lot of value inside those existing systems, and that a replacement wholeheartedly tends to be a pretty challenging embarkment. And so instead, there is an additional approach where you can focus in on how do I integrate and unlock that data that's trapped inside those silos, unlock that business logic that's inside those systems, and is exposed in a way that could be consumed through other applications, including modern interfaces. But if you expose that, you also have to wrap into that secure API. So controlling who has access to that data, who has access to that business logic. And if you can do that, then that can enable into our second point, our second topic, which is that you then can have a simplified modern interface where your constituents can interact with those systems. They can start doing self-service. They can offload your own workers since they can go through and see their own data and interact with their data. And then the third point is that if we can integrate into our existing systems and expose that data, we can also do additional analytics. So how could I go and do modern analytics, make it very accessible, easy to go through and use through modern tooling, and go through and get the best value out of it without having to, again, go through and replace the entire system. And the fourth topic that we're going to get into today is our first three, we're talking from an industry perspective, is we also have invited someone from government to speak on their own journey and what their experiences have been in approaching these overall concepts. Okay, so that's our topic today. I appreciate it. Let's go ahead and do some quick introductions. So myself, I'm Chris Bordeman. I'm the CTO with Software AG Government Solutions. Our focus is on that integration layer. How do we go through and connect into our various business systems and expose it in a way that lets us leverage the set in place. Okay, and then if we go through and hand it off to Kevin.
Kevin Jones, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Cardinality. Cardinality is a SaaS, in our perspective, is a business solution as a service that covers Medicaid eligibility, integrated eligibility, child welfare, child support, all of the HHS stack. We are actually providing out-of-the-box solutions that are built to federal specs, to state specs, and giving you about 75 to 80% out-of-box already in compliance with all your federal standards, and enabling you to innovate solutions fast and integrate agnostic to any platform, integrate to existing systems, capable of becoming system of record and maintaining your current systems of record, and enabling you to give a 360 view omni-channel opportunity for you to engage with your clients and improve outcomes for your constituents.
Excellent. Nick.
Hello, friends. Hello, people at home. I'm Nick Spees from Snowflake. I'm the Chief Federal Technologist. Snowflake is the world's first data cloud. First, we started as the first data engine built for the cloud, and then we started into the data platform built for the cloud, and now we're the data cloud built on our previous platform. And if that confuses you, don't worry, I'll explain later.
Okay, Greg.
And good afternoon. My name is Greg James. I'm Deputy Secretary for Operations at the Maryland Department of Human Services. We are the state's human services agency. Maryland does have a separate Department of Health. I'm here both as a representative of my department, but also the Department of Human Services is the state's designated operator for MD Think, which is Maryland's new cloud-based shared human services platform, and I will also explain that later.
Perfect.
We love spoilers.
So, and we do have a couple demonstrations, brief demonstrations that we'll go through and show today against these concepts. So, before we get into those, I want to spend a little bit more on the integration side. So a couple of years ago, there was a study conducted in 2000 that surveyed 400 individuals around their modernization efforts. And what that study found is that 74%, 3/4 of all those projects failed to complete. Trying to go through and do a complete replacement modernization project failed 3 out of 4 times. Now, the reasons for those failures do vary, but number one had to do with funding. Did they budget enough? And we've all heard this many times, that doing that replacement costs a lot more than you think, and do I have enough funding to it? But the second reason that those tended to fail that may surprise you, and it has to do with the integrations. The number of systems that your existing legacy systems are already integrated into, fully tested, fully vetted, all secured, all monitored. Trying to replicate that, again, is something that's not usually taken into consideration as part of those modernization efforts. And that leads to a lot of failures. So there's an alternative way of doing this, and that is to modernize in place. How do I connect into those existing systems rather than ripping them out and then providing a more modern interface where I can just expose that to my constituents, expose it to my employees even, making it easier to get access into it, introducing mobility access into those systems, or even integrating into other systems that might be SaaS-based, other cloud locations as well. How do I go through and do that is through an additional way of doing it through integration. Now, our approach is that we do this through a series of connectors. So we're very big on doing no-code integration, or at worst, a low-code integration. There's a little snippet we'll see inside the demonstration of just a part of that tool today. But you can connect into the existing systems using these tools that are already pre-built to talk at a data layer, at an application layer, even at a UI layer to go through and connect into your existing business systems. Now, if you do that, you get to value a lot faster, you take a lot of risk out, you take a lot of cost out, and you can also approach it through a modularity. Rather than replacing an entire system, you can start on one particular business function, one particular area off your existing system, modernize against that, get additional funding, get additional training, lessons learned, and then move on into the next place. And so doing that, you've greatly accelerated your value while leveraging your existing investments. We've done this for ourselves across government, across businesses, at a state and local level. Comes to mind for me is Pennsylvania, DHS, big ones at the federal level, Social Security. Is a massive mainframe that we all interact, probably at least once a year checking our statements. Another system we interact with once a year is IRS. We probably have all either filed or filed an extension with our own taxes. But we provide the glue that does all the integration inside both of the IRS and the Social Security systems and various state and local systems to go through and enable that. So today I'm gonna hand things on off, but taking that concept of modernization in place, we're going to go through it and do a use case explanation and then do a quick demonstration of how we can go through and provide this value. So, Kevin?
Yep. So just to give you a quick background of me and how we got to this point in working with Software AG, prior to joining Cardinality, I was the Chief Information Officer for the Indiana Department of Child Services, where I was responsible for replacing our CWIS solution and our child support system. I was asked by Governor's office to move over and do that because prior to that, I was the Chief Technology Officer for our Indiana Family Social Services, where I was responsible for replacing our MMIS system, our Medicaid waiver programs, our enterprise data warehouse, and our eligibility system. And once I joined Cardinality, one of the first things I thought of was, hey, there was a ton of things that I wanted 10 years ago that I didn't have. I can see where this can happen. And one of the biggest challenges I had was, how do I take these big monolithical systems that take 5 years, 7 years to implement, and you get a series of change orders where you start at 80 and you end up at $500 million. And the biggest thing we saw was exactly what he mentioned. How do you integrate platforms and emerging technologies? And then even more importantly, with the pandemic, how do we immediately give that omni-channel integration and interface for our constituents to improve their outcomes? And the biggest thing that we saw with the Cardinality platform, it is capable of becoming your system of record at any point in time. But even more importantly, it is capable of becoming that enterprise omni-channel layer between your FCMs who are going to be overwhelmed in 6 to 8 months when they have to do all of these redeterminations for eligibility and enable the constituents to actually get the services they're looking for. Just tell me what is going on now so I can adjust and the impact it's going to have on my family immediately. That's the challenge that I focused on, my vulnerable populations who deserve better from us. So we partner with Software AG to enable the ability to quickly enable you to integrate with your existing legacy system so that you don't have to worry about, hey, in order to get this new platform, these emerging technologies, I got to go through this big transformation. No. Quick integration. Data is there. I will not create a duplicate system of record for you, so you don't have to deal with the challenges of SSA audits and IRS audits downstream, but you give them what you need, whether it's 15 eligibility types that you can only transition to. And then 5 years later, you got another 10 that you're going to come down. And then another 5 years later, you got 3 more. You will be able to give them that user experience, change your continuity of business, enable them to get what they need, change your case manager's work so that they can then support that continuity of business. And then when we decide what we're going to do on the policy side and the tech people catch up, you can now transition just that part and not disrupt your continuity of business, minimize your risk and your impact for that transition because you've done it in a modular way that reduces risk overall. So we're excited to share some of those things, and what we're showing you in this demonstration is a part of that, where we're taking integration into the mainframe of a legacy system, which several states are still there, and then bringing that data into a modern platform to give you a way to see what happens during redetermination, how you can share that information and reduce that impact and caseload and bring situational awareness to the socio-technical enterprise of people, process, and technology and enable the ones who are impacted the most to understand how that process has impacted me and using technology appropriately to deliver the information they need to be successful.
Excellent. So if we could go ahead and go to slide 2 and start the demonstration.
With Software AG's Web Methods integration platform, you can seamlessly connect your enterprise application, the system of record, with the system of engagement, Cardinality. Creating APIs, we make the demographic information available real-time to be used by Cardinality. Using drag and drop interfaces, we quickly map the different data formats between the two systems.
This is when the data flows into Cardinality, the system of engagement, from the enterprise application, which is the system of record, through a web methods integration. Through an intuitive customer portal, Cardinality's solution allows individuals to update and review their information. Here we have James Bard, who's reviewing his demographic and geographic information provided for Medicaid eligibility redetermination. The data here is pulled from the enterprise application and populated. Further, its platform agnostic nature, supported by modular build, allows for seamless integration as well as transition readiness with other solutions. Let us now say James wants to update his address. The details are reflected here and in real time updated in the enterprise solution. Cardinality's system of engagement is simple, easy to use, and provides a user a 360-degree view into their eligibility.
Using the APIs, changes in Cardinality's system of engagement are immediately reflected in the enterprise application, creating a seamless integration between the two systems.
Excellent. So again, what you saw is our integration platform, not moving and replicating data back and forth, but just exposing it through secure APIs, and then surfaced up into a modern interface to go through interact and update back into the back-end system. And so going further, we talked about how do I go through and expose my data into better analytics. So Nick, if you can go through and give us an overview there.
Yeah, absolutely. So these gentlemen have done a great job of summing up one of the problems that we have in IT. And the problem really is, why do we want to get away from legacy systems? Well, I remember being much younger and probably a lot thinner and sitting in a data center running a bunch of servers. And it was 5, 10, 15, 20 servers attached to a single disk array. And I named each of my servers garbage like Zeus and Thor and all kinds of stupid names, right? Because I thought I was cool. I was back then, I'm not anymore. So why did I do all of that? And what happens when I start adding more workloads, more applications, more people want to get access to that data? That's where legacy systems start to fall down. And we always thought in database that it just add more compute to it, it will go faster, it will be fine. But there's this really weird thing called physics that means we can only get so much data off of a spinning disk at a time. That's all we can do. How do we get around that in our business lives? Well, think about what we used to collaborate 5, 10 years ago. All of us would have some spreadsheet someplace on a shared drive. There was an Excel spreadsheet that we would come up with, and we would put our numbers in, and somebody else would try to open that same document, and what does it tell them? You can't have it, the file is locked, and the guy you need it from just went on vacation for a month. Enjoy, right? That was kind of the way things went. We had these Legacy file systems with these legacy constraints creating reasons why we couldn't get multiple readers and writers to the same thing at one time. What do we do now? I don't know about you guys, but I spend probably 30% of my working life watching a spreadsheet with 25,000 people on it at the same time as me on Google Docs or Office 365. That is a fundamental shift of the underlying technology that we operate on every day. Office 365 and Google Docs created something very, very interesting called object storage. Many, many readers and writers, all those people on that spreadsheet at the same time, is just a factor of the underlying storage that runs the platform. Snowflake takes that same exact paradigm and we apply it to database. Why does that matter to any of this? Well, the point is to get things like machine learning, artificial intelligence, to get better analytics, more robust systems, better algorithms, for better outcomes for healthcare, for less fraud, waste, and abuse, just in general, making everyone's lives better. And we can only do that if we have access to the data in real time or near real time and not have to get buried under hours and months of coordinating who's going to have access to the data at what time. That's where Snowflake comes in. That's our purpose in life, is to enable concurrent, high-speed access to as much data as you can cram into the cloud without creating something that is inefficient or too expensive to be used. We're awesome like that.
Excellent. So should we go ahead and do your demo?
Sure, we have it on
So if you go to slide 3.
Hello, I'd like to show you some dashboards that I've created using Snowflake's Snowflake, as well as the queries I use to build these dashboards. Before we do that, I need to explain to you how we arrived at this data. You see, my mainframe application and data source resides on a mainframe, but it could reside on any LUW platform. I use a tool from Software AG called Connects that has over 150 plus database adapters to allow you to extract, load, and even transform your data onto a target repository. In this case, my repository is a cloud instance of Snowflake. Once the process has completed, I am able to view the data inside of my Snowflake database. Let's go back to my dashboards. The first dashboard that I would like to discuss with you is the top 10 zip codes that have the most candidates that are eligible for redetermination eligibility. By placing your cursor anywhere on this heat graph, you can determine how many candidates reside within that zip code. This is the query that built this dashboard. The next dashboard I would like to show you is the next month birthday by zip code. This may be a stretch of what you're looking for, but this will be an indicator of all individuals that will be having a birthday in the month of May. This could also be an indication of which zip codes could be possibly the busiest and have the most activity in that month. This is the query that built that dashboard. All of this data that resides in the Snowflake database is dynamic. The same tool that I use to load the data into Snowflake can also be used to be scheduled to replicate those changes from the source database to the target database, therefore giving you all of the most updated information on a regular basis. Thank you.
No, thank you, Eric.
Great. So I'm not sure how well that came through on the audio, but what you were seeing was a real-time update back into Snowflake using our web methods, in this case the Connex product, to go through and expose data from a mainframe and bring it back into Snowflake and be able to go through and use it just like you would with any other modern tool to go through the analysis. Not shown here is some of that additional functionality that Nick was speaking to, with multiple users coming in versus just the one user perspective that we saw here in the demonstration.
Yeah, and you could plug in, Snowflake's a data platform, so all ODBC or JDBC connected like any other database. So once the data is brought in by these tools, once Cardinality's done its job of matching up the data types and done all of its smoothing, the data is in Snowflake and it's ready to go. So if you wanted to bring an external tool like Apache Spark to do any kind of threat analysis or looking at certain patterns or behavioral patterns in the records that you have. For example, we showed up there the number of folks by zip code in the next month that will have a birthday. Well, that information could be helpful if you're planning that those folks have to do an in-person visit to get an eligibility determination. That's how you could determine who needs help, because a certain zip code has 3 times the people as everybody else. You don't know that until the data can be analyzed by the right tool at the right time. That's the benefit of moving data out of a legacy system, out of the system of record, and doing the analysis in a cloud platform like Snowflake.
Okay, excellent. Again, modernizing in place, taking a particular, we focus a lot on eligibility and redeterminations here for our use case, but taking a particular use that you're trying to go through, solve for that, and expand for that. So what I'd like to do is hand over to Greg, though. You guys have done a ton of work in this area already, and give a little more background to some things that you're working on, and also kind of where you're heading to.
Yeah, thank you. And so, as I mentioned, the Department of Human Services in Maryland, we are the operator of the MDThink Shared Human Services Platform. So what that is when we arrived in 2015 at the start of Governor Hogan's administration, we found a bunch of legacy mainframe systems and COBOL programs, bulletproof, but about as flexible as granite. And so rather than trying to do a small step on one of those, we undertook a fairly major program of replacing all of those legacy applications and creating this new shared human services platform. So basically, within an Amazon cloud, we've created these environments with shared security, shared identity and access management, a number of shared services. So basically, the common tools and components that we'll see across all of these applications. So we have a business rules engine and a business process engine. We have notification, content management. We have a shared data repository and shared analytics. And all of those tools are available to be used for multiple applications. So we started in 2015. We managed to get everybody on board and got our funding approved in 2017. And by the end of this year, we will have not only stood up the platform and those various shared services, but we have replaced our child welfare system, created a new system for adult services, replaced our eligibility and enrollment system that covers temporary cash assistance, SNAP, non-MAGI Medicaid, and long-term care. And our child support application will be completed by the end of this summer, end of this year. So that was phase one of, and the health benefits exchange for Maryland is also now on this platform. So that was phase one of this project. Phase two will be to expand it and bring additional state agencies and departments onto the platform. But that's not what I'm really here to talk about. What I wanted to talk about is another aspect of phase two, which is now that we have these tools on the platform, folks are very impatient. They're like, well, we should be able to use that. So we have started a new initiative with a lot of our state agency partners to change how we make our data available to partners and vendors to work with. So historically, and my department does this today, so this is not casting stones on anybody, but we don't do our own analytics, right? We generate a data set, we hand it off to an external partner, a vendor, university system, whomever. We let their data scientists and their experts analyze the data and then give us back a report, give us back a product. That process has problems. It makes it difficult to keep a track on where all your data is and who's working on it. And basically, you lose control of your own data, right? So what we are going to do going forward is create workshops, basically, virtual environments within the MDThink cloud, on the MDThink platform, where those same data sets that we used to hand off to somebody else, they will reside on the platform. We give access to our external partners, to our vendors, to come in. We can provision it with whatever tools they need. They need SAS, SQL databases, whatever it is, we can set up those tools. They come, they work within our environment. The data stays with the state. The data is available for use by multiple vendors, so you don't have a situation where your data set looks a little bit different than my data set, and how do I reconcile them? You know exactly which data sets are out there. It gives you that comprehensive view. And also, as we as a state mature and become better at working with data, which is also part of our vision with MDThink, it makes that same data set directly available for our state partners. to work with and for our state departments and agencies. And this same approach, call it a workshop, call it a kitchen, whatever you want to think about it as, we can make that, we can replicate that multiple times for multiple state agencies to leverage those existing tools that we have, the security, the identity and access management, the analytic tools. If they want to use our existing analytic tools, those are available as well. So we can make all that available. So it is a different way for us to modernize in place. And one of the other advantages of this approach for Maryland is we can start working with the legacy data today, knowing that it will be a few years before a lot of those legacy systems are replaced by a new modern system that will hopefully reside on MDThink, but if not, wherever it resides, it's still there and still available for folks, for us to bring that together. So,
Excellent. I appreciate that. What I want to do right now is just get an opportunity, so we've all kind of spoken one-off from a panel, just kind of open the panel up. If there's any additional thoughts before I open up to the audience for any questions that might come back up into the panelists. So I don't know if you'd like to go through and start. Kevin, any additional comments from what you've heard today?
Yeah, I think one of the things, because even Cardinality has been a part of MDThink. So I think when you see things evolve, as each state starts to use it, you start to see things that become amazing. I mean, I think really it's the goal for what we're trying to do, and I think everyone on the stage, is to empower states to take ownership of their ecosystem. So many times, I know even in the situation I was in, I had limitations in what I could own and what I couldn't do. But I think leveraging some of the technology you've seen, and specifically in Cardinality, our mission is empowering states to take ownership, limiting the impact that legacy systems have created. I mean, I don't know if you're going out and you start to do implementations, how many workarounds you see in states, how many limitations they've created or impacted, how many things are not getting downstream to those vulnerable populations because of the limitations that have been created. One of the things we focus in on is the classic socio-technical enterprise, people, process, and technology, and creating alignment where people and process can align to say what I want, and technology supports what they need. That's it. So I think we're starting to see that, and we come together as a group to continue that and to start that discussion in some cases and really start to look at states like Maryland who are taking that initiative and saying, you know what, I'm going to accept that challenge. I'm going to take ownership. I'm not going to be afraid of what that means to me. And I think that if we continue as a group, continue to do that, it will help the people who are still on the state side, trying to get to the people who need us the most, give them the outcomes. If we focus on the outcomes, I think we'll see a lot of amazing things, and there's an opportunity for everybody in here to grow, learn, and become better for the people who really need us to be that way. So I would love to hear more from you guys and me less, but I'm excited about the opportunity to be here and share with these guys.
Okay, great. Thanks. Nick, any additional comments?
I definitely want to hear less of me. Two things. First of all, when you say COBOL, it can't be bulletproof. It's musket-proof. That's going to go back a little further. The other thing is, we talked up here about the technology and integrating with a mainframe. You saw that on the very, very brief demo. But don't think, a lot of people think they have, like, going to the cloud is an all or nothing affair. You can't just take little pieces. You can't do little parts. You can't do integrations. You absolutely can. You don't have to flush the entire toilet, right? Go into your environment and start incrementally building value out of those tools. Decide what goals you have for things like cloud services. It could be any modern architecture, but cloud especially. If you're going to go do that move, it doesn't mean you can't do anything on premise ever again. That's not the case at all. Don't be afraid to take small steps, incremental steps, measured steps, and in the end, you'll end up exactly where you want to be. It'll take a little bit longer, but the work will be quality, and you won't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater quite so often. So small incremental steps and get where you're going well.
Okay, great. I just a couple extra comments, then I'll let you add, Greg. So one thing that you had mentioned that I thought was actually very important is you talked about your data and how you expose it, you share it with your various partners and your various other departments, and we've talked a little bit about ownership associated to that data. And so something that we are seeing a lot of is how do I expose that data through an API and make it discoverable, through a portal, whether it be out into your constituents, out into your partners, out into other agencies, or if you have reporting requirements up to a federal level, how do I expose that data in a secure way? And we're seeing a lot of groups moving on into more of an API approach versus just a dump once a year. Here's my compliance that I have to go through and hit, and here's a CSV or an XLS, and here's my 2019 data, and here's my 2020 data, which don't yield themselves very well to be able to do any sort of analytics associated to that. You have to do additional processing. So we're seeing various, especially big in the public sector, how do I expose that data that could be readily consumed and then integrated or combined to go through and create additional value to that. The example of using the zip code and the eligibility and where do I have need, you're seeing other people go through and quote this idea of combining needs to where the resources are at. Anytime there's a major natural disaster, that they're trying to pair this data in real time through volunteers, but they need to get access to it in a way that it could be readily consumed. So I think it's good that you guys are doing that, and it's definitely reflective of something that we've seen a lot of our customers asking for us through the API platform to go through and expose it. Greg, is there any follow-on things you had?
Yeah, I think first I want to say the presentations were very impressive, and certainly I think if there's a theme I would add to this is there is no one solution to these challenges and these problems, and really you need to look at what you've got at your state and to figure out the best path forward and the best approach. And with that, questions would be
Excellent.
great.
So we'll open up to any questions if anyone has. Just raise your hand, call. Just let us know who you'd like to pose it to or to the panel itself. And then panelists, if we could just repeat the question on out for those that are streaming this into the recording so that we do capture it without you having to go and find a mic in the room. So any questions? Oh, over there.
Can you talk about how you integrate identity and access management into a secure API environment?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the question is how to integrate the identity and access management into those APIs. And so part of that is how you design your APIs. We try and set ourselves in front of even existing APIs. You might buy a product today that already has a whole slew of APIs associated to it, but it may not have the concept of identity or identity specific into your environment built into that. And so we'll sit in front of that, and you can tie into your API access an initial access key. So you can go through and do it off of a token. We can go through and do it off of certificates. There's a couple of different ways to go through and do that. We can do it through a SAML. We can do it through OAuth as another common practice to go through and use. And then you bring that OAuth token into your API calls. And where that's been really important for us that I've seen the most, I won't use the word I would have used since I'm being recorded. The most specific or precise way of doing things was with Social Security. And it ties back to knowing the access of who actually accessed every single person's Social Security record. They need to tie it down to the exact user, not just like a user has privileges, but they need to know this specific person. There's no system accounts in that your credential has to carry through every single layer of the architecture from the web interface all the way back into the mainframe. And we had to demonstrate that we could bring that security access token through every single layer and do the authentication or logging associated to it. IRS is the same type of requirement, is who's accessing your tax records. That's tracked down to the individual user, and it follows through with that same API. So it's just part of doing it, but the nice thing is that you can put a gateway in front of that. And so you can take a whole bunch of existing deployments, existing technologies, maybe even stuff that's been built in-house, and rather than rewrite it, just put the gateway in front of it and then control all access through that, which could include the authentication.
And for Cardinality, it's the same. We'll use the SIMO or whatever he has there, but prior to him passing that information to me or someone accessing that information, I'm going to authenticate you as well. So once he hits, there's another level of authentication. We run in PUB 1075 compliant, and we run in GovCloud, we run in FedRAMP moderate and high. So you're gonna get the same level of authentications as he hits me, and I'm sure as he passed down to Snowflake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do the same thing. So we're a little bit different. We don't directly have APIs at Snowflake. For Snowflake, you know, a data account, an account in Snowflake can own as much data as it wants. And then if you want to share data between Snowflake accounts, even if it's between cloud providers like Google to Amazon or Amazon to Azure, Snowflake can allow you to do that. But the important thing across all three of us is the mechanism is very similar. We're going to use the same Azure Active Directory, SAML, OAuth, right? The usual alphabet soup on authentication providers. We're going to do the same technology stack. It's just the way that we share is an API based. It's you sharing a secure view or a defined data object. And then from that point on, you can get data access that way. But yeah, same authentication sources.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions? Yes, in the back. Okay. So if you can repeat
So the
that
question
first.
was, how has Maryland matured, not just the technology, but the people and processes associated with it? I will say with a lot of hard work and some trial and error. And moving to this, to MDThink, and one thing I didn't mention before is Maryland, we're our own integrator. So we don't have a vendor who built this. We have a team of state employees that was responsible and managed all this, working with staff augmentation, a team that brought this together. That alone is a significant culture shift for a lot of state agencies, right? Because no longer, there is no more blame the vendor. You are the vendor. You own it. And so getting folks engaged and getting them to the table to engage as a partner has been a long process. But I think the flip side of that is all of our state agencies and our state workers recognized the benefits of getting these new applications. And once they've been delivered, for the most part, our workers have been very happy and very satisfied and are seeing the benefits. And so the time that they invested up front, helping us design, helping us test, going through the various stages of development has really paid off. I will say, as we expand to other state agencies, we're going to be taking the lessons that we learned at the Department of Human Services and transferring those to other state agencies earlier in the process so that we can continue to build that engagement and that development with the staff. And the other thing I will say, I think one of the things we've learned is at the start of the process, ask your teams to really define what their business process is today. Plan for a month, or sorry, tell them they have a month, plan for 3. If they can't do it in 3 months, you may not be ready to start this project because you're going to spend a lot of time working and then reworking in that project because they can't tell you what they want to have built. And if you don't have that, an agile project like MDThink is going to struggle.
And I'm just going to build off that a little bit and speak from some other customers that we had in government who have kind of struggled with that same question. And kind of 2 prongs kind of come to mind. One is that we've heard a lot with the existing systems is that people are aging out, they're retiring out, and so no one's necessarily around. And that's part of that culture of can I go through and mature associated to it. But the flip side is a lot of the staff that they want to go through and hire from a younger generation are looking to use the new interfaces that you would see, the easy to use, the easy development approach that they've got. They may not like to go back and learn COBOL. I learned it. My wife still loves it. But you know, it's not regularly taught in college, right? And so there's a lot of value that they're embracing the new tooling to be able to modernize in place because they're able to attract more people who want to go and actually use those new tools. And so it's like a newer, you don't have to bring along the existing staff. Your newer staff is like anxious to take advantage of that. And then the second prong that comes to mind for me, and I think we've all experienced this a lot in the last couple of years, is that we want to interact with government the way we interact with every other business. You know, you mentioned 360. You know, we're all very used to that. You know, Virginia DMV closed down, but yet there was a ton of driver, self-service that was actually there hitting against the mainframe on the back-end side with a modern web UI to go through and do the interaction. We all have these expectations, and so I think that you see a lot more staff willing to, it may be a tougher journey for them, but they're willing to go through and do it because that's what they get out of it. And these aren't tools that are just used by your constituents. They're also tools that your employees can start taking advantage and start using. Oh, I don't have to go connect into the green screen to do my updates. I can just go and, I can pull up my browser on my home computer even and do some of my work. That's fantastic. So I think that actually helps in some of that people side.
I'll add, when I was 10 months ago when I was a customer and I was responsible for transforming 4,000 case managers and another 1,500 case managers on child support and another 5,000 elected officials in the county prosecutors for child support. The issue that I looked at, or what I was really able to look at, I started small. He mentioned this earlier. We started with a small application, and I picked the worst customer, the most complaining customer, the person who will tell you how trash you are before you could get out the room. And I started with them, and when we finished in 90 days implementing an ICPC integration to NICE, where we took our time to get a kid placed out of state from about 90 days to 1 hour, literally. And they told everybody this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I knew at that point that we had a winner. That person became an evangelist. I created evangelists in multiple spaces. And then we did another application where case managers were able to get their travel. So we were able to get travel done in a point where they're doing an hour for travel versus 10, and they're getting their travel reimbursements in 3 days instead of 2 weeks. And then I was able to implement a solution that enabled us to reduce our staff turnover by 35%, giving the state back $70 million a year that we were spending in staff turnover. My governor gave me all the money I wanted to make these transitions. So I, top to bottom, built a coalition and started small. By doing that, it enabled me to then sell to my developers, who I had 180 developers. Half of them were COBOL developers because we were still on mainframe. 100% of all of those individuals before I left owned a certification in a modern technology, and all the people thought they were going to be retiring this year say, hey, Kevin, I got a new job somewhere else. I'm doing Salesforce. I'm doing Cardinality. I'm doing MuleSoft. I'm doing Tableau. I'm doing Snowflake. They're all doing that. So if you start small and focus on what the people are asking you, that people alignment, you can build all the things you need because you stop and you listen to them instead of telling them what you're going to give them.
It's amazing to me. Folks who do a lot of these speaking, I do a lot of this stuff, right? We love to say the same. In fact, you had a version of it you said earlier. Mine was always people, policy, and pipes. You had to have people that talk, you had to have policies saying they were allowed to talk, and you had to have a pipe they could talk through, right? That was always a thing. And we love to get up in front of people like you and talk about how bad it is trying to get people to do stuff. But here's the secret. They want to. They want to do this. I remember the first time, this is like 2020, my mom called me. She had her iPad in her hand. My mom was using an iPad, and she quoted the CDC dashboard for COVID cases in Pennsylvania to me over the phone. She used a dashboard, publicly available. That's amazing. That's data made accessible. People want new skills. They want to understand the technology. They want to solve their work problems. So I don't think there's definitely an education component to this, right? We have to be willing to acquire new skills, to become, data literacy is kind of the term of the moment right now. How do I use data? How do I understand it? How do I categorize it? I completely get that. We need to go down that path. We have to show people how dashboards work and how to build dashboards that are meaningful. Example of that, I don't need a window. I don't need my dashboard to reflect my own actions. I know what I did. I was there, right? Don't show me that. Show me the data about the world that I live in and my effect on it. Give me a window, not a mirror. We start doing that, and people immediately start gravitating towards these dashboards. They start gravitating towards this data and towards the systems that give them that. So people, as much as we love to say is the big problem, they're really not. the pipes really aren't the problem either. It's policy, which is why what this gentleman is doing is so important, right? Building a place where those things are encouraged, people will keep pace. The tools will be there. And if you build them the right way and architect them the right way, all three of those components will fall into place and the world would be better.
Okay. So any other questions we might have? Okay. Well, perfect. Can we go to slide 4? And this is just our, oh, sorry, go back. You already had it up there. So here's our contact information. I'm not sure on the recordings from the sessions for those available. I know some of the demonstrations that the screens might have been a little bit too small. I think we're all more than happy to go and do a deeper dive, for your particular use case and do a demonstration that's a little more tailored and definitely a lot more visible than what you can see looking across the room. With that, I appreciate everyone's time today, and thank you very much.
By the way, I heard 2 people sneeze. God bless you both.